I'm Bouris and this is Straight Talk.
To me, there's nothing worse than waking up dry as a chip. You know, your mouth feels like the bottom of the cockatoo's cage.
You know, our industry is a very demanding one. It's a very physical one. You're required to produce the best every single day. Accidentally started cooking with a lot of actors in Hollywood. Robert Downey Jr., DiCaprio, Bill Clinton.
I'm glad to be back.
Most recently, Chris Hemsworth.
Today I'm going undercover on the internet.
We spend time cooking for other people and we work long hours making sure that people are fed. And yet we've somehow haven't paid attention to our own health. You know, the industry has always been very difficult to sustain. It's complete chaos.
Sergio Perera, welcome to Straight Talk, mate.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I spoke at Humankind, so did you.
Yeah.
What was your topic, mate?
Mine was on the future of chefs. I think that's something that has changed quite a bit. I think especially, post-COVID, I think chefs have a much bigger responsibility. You know, I think we've realized also that, the industry has always been very difficult to sustain business-wise. And I think now we're starting to realize that our resources are very limited, and the chefs need to start taking more of an initiative as far as the craft isn't enough anymore. I think that, the modern day chef is going to be someone who also understands agriculture, science, nutrition. And that, I think that's really important to be able to have in our industry. And also not just that, but personal interest in self-development, whether it's spiritually, emotionally, physically. Our industry is a very demanding one. It's a very physical one. It's a very difficult profession, So that's my subject was based on that and how we have evolved. There's always been this stigma with chefs about, being very hardcore in the sense of work hard, party hard. And to a certain extent, it is true. I've done my share of that. We were in a very difficult and stressful environment, and then afterwards, all we want to do is decompress. So yeah, there has been that stigma, but now it's changed. I know a lot of incredible chefs who are taking an initiative to be healthy physically and mentally, because good cooking is physical. It requires a certain stamina, and it's like being in the Marines. You really need to be on top of your game and to be able to last. It's aggressive. It's an aggressive place to be in.
Maybe I'd say most people don't understand that. So
yeah,
they take your word for it, but maybe you can just take us through what that means. I mean, are we talking about Gordon Ramsay style shit? Like people screaming at each other. What's it like? I mean, by the way, where you are sitting right now was a kitchen.
Really?
For a restaurant,
Really?
on the other side of which was a Japanese restaurant.
Interesting.
And we had Japanese chefs, and my son and my other son that they owned it, and there was a whiskey bar outside, and COVID came, but they had to close it because the difficulty was neither of my sons are chefs, definitely not Japanese chefs, and they always had problems with the chefs. They were expensive, volatile, walk out on you, and you'd be, like if you run a restaurant, you can't, and if you can't cook and you don't have a chef, you're in trouble.
Yeah,
this all got too hard in the end, and then COVID came along. They got like impossible then, but so you were sitting right with the chef.
Wow.
The chef was operating, and maybe explain. I have worked in a kitchen, so when I was a younger guy in my 20s, I went to TAFE and did a cooking course, and I worked with my uncle, who's a chef. Not like you. I didn't go to Japan and learn how to cook or anything like that, but I went to TAFE, and but I remember one day my uncle wasn't there, and he asked me would I do the breakfast in the morning. This was a restaurant attached to a hotel. And he said, would I do it? I said, okay, no problem. So I went there, and the owner of the joint liked to have a drink. And I remember I was only young. I was 20. I remember he came in, he said, look, get me some bacon and eggs. I want my bacon crispy. I said, oh, okay, well, cool, crispy. He came back and I could see he's had a bad hangover. He came back and he said, mate, not crispy enough, cook it again. He did it twice. And then the third time he came back and he started abusing the shit out of me. Like, it was pretty full on. So all I remember is I got his plate. I said, oh, really? So I just threw it at him. And I said, you go fuck yourself. And I walked out. And well, of course, my uncle wasn't happy. Dad's brother he was very happy. But like, still, I wasn't going to take that shit. And I guess I can understand. And that wasn't really much pressure compared to what you guys got every single night. Customers blowing up. You might have someone running the front of the shop and someone running the internals and someone checking the quality of the food. Yeah. And everybody's bumping into each other because they're small spaces. Yeah. Take us through what it's like in a when you're talking about chefs, you're talking about not talking about master chef, you're talking about chefs in a restaurant. Take me through it. What's it like?
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, you have to consider when you think of the restaurant industry, consistency is the most difficult thing to achieve. And with that,
consistency of what?
Consistency of the product of the dish that you're creating. You know, because you're always depending on the quality, and you never know what farmers are going to come across. You know, there's a lot of difficulties that happen, whether it's weather related or something's happening with the crops.
Quality of the ingredients.
Exactly. So we're always at the mercy of our producers. So that could be challenging. And it depends on a lot of things, you know. But when you're trying to, especially in the fine dining, I think you're required to produce the best every single day. You know, there's this precision that happens in kitchens, and you're expected to repeat that over and over again, and you're expected to make it perfect every single time
and on time,
and that's even more so. It's everything is a timed event in a kitchen, you know, and that is it is a difficult thing to do. You know, I think also a lot of, you know, the restaurants that I've cooked, you know, for in Europe have been very strict. And like I said, it is a lot like being in the Marines. You know, you have to show up on time. You have to get, you know, all your pots and pans. You come into the restaurant with a list of things you need to do for that day for your section. And, you know, I remember one of the restaurants that I worked at in Spain, we were very limited on what we had with pots, pans, utensils, that sort of thing. So if you had a very specific thing to do that day, you had to get in there as early as possible and get what you needed, because if it wasn't there anymore, you just
make a claim.
You couldn't. Yeah, exactly. You couldn't do it, and then you were screwed. And then you'd have to deal with an angry chef, and you just had to figure it out. I remember seeing full on fistfights in the kitchens because someone was trying to get a pot and someone needed it for something else. So it's complete chaos. But it's interesting once everyone gets into that state of mind of working, it becomes this beautiful kind of symphony. I look at kitchens like a beautiful, you know, a piece from Beethoven. You know, there's that calm before the storm. You know, or vice versa. It's the storm first, then the calm.
So it could be Tchaikovsky.
Yeah, exactly, and it is. It's a very aggressive environment. Yet, you know, you've got these professionals who have to treat what they do with care and compassion. You know, you're dealing with food. It's consumption. You know, it's if you put bad energy into something, it's gonna come out on the plate, and then the individual eating it will feel it. They'll know. But there is a beautiful kind of camaraderie that's built once everything starts moving and all the moving parts are fluid, just like a symphony, and it's a beautiful thing to experience. You know, and
if it works,
exactly. Sometimes it could be chaotic, and you know, I've had times where things have been thrown at me. I mean, one of the restaurants I worked at as an apprentice in just outside of Paris, I remember making a sauce, and the chef was just like you were describing your situation. He was unhappy with it, and I had to make it at least 6 times. And after the 6th time, he threw the hot, sauce on top of me. You know, these things were very common. Can't get away with it much today, but that's the sort of environment that I grew up doing. It was necessary to produce the kind of consistency that we needed.
So let's say you're a part of the team. You're in the kitchen. Obviously, kitchen last orders, I don't know, depends where you are in the world, I guess, but 9:30 sort of thing. Then you got to finish off at, you probably finish at 10:30. Then you got to clean up and do all the stuff you got to do depending where you sit in the ranking. And
Exactly.
and you've been through this mental period, and let's assume it's a busy joint. Your brain's a bit fried.
Yeah.
Just explain to me, what does the kitchen do? Where do they go? I mean, they don't go, oh, see you later, I'm going to go home and go to bed, because your state of mind's a bit fried. You got to unpack it a bit. What is the normal? What has been the normal process for chefs and or people in that group?
Well, that's the beautiful thing about the camaraderie that we create. It was normal to have a long, night of service, is to go out and have beers with your chef friends. There's a special bond that we create that nobody else can understand. And it's a beautiful relationship because everyone understands what's expected of them each day. So you embark on this aggressive, scary journey, but filled with beauty at the same time, because you're doing beautiful. Hopefully, depending on where you're working at, you're doing beautiful food, and the head chef is very respectful of the food and what they're trying to, show their customers. But the thing that we did, and I still do, I love, after a night of service, when I did work more in kitchens, was to have that drink with your friends, and talk about, a lot of times we wouldn't actually even talk about what happened in the restaurant. We would just completely want to disconnect and talk about other things. A lot of times we'd end up talking about music and or trips that we had done, or places. Sometimes we just talk about places that we wanted to work at, or things that we wanted to achieve with a certain dish, which is always great. But
because I know a lot of chefs who became quite good friends with a lot of musos.
Yeah,
musos and chefs sort of had this sort of simpatico relationship,
very similar,
and they all tend to go to the same places. And like that, and unfortunately, part of that soon as you're drinking, which makes sense. You have a few drinks, and then you have the one that you probably shouldn't have had.
Yeah.
And the next thing you know, comes a line of Coke, and then they're on the gear.
Yeah.
And then they try to go home and go to sleep, but they're fucked up, so they pop a Valium in their gob, or some sort of sleeping pill.
Yeah.
And then they wake up feeling like jack shit and filthy on themselves, and that puts them in a bad frame of mind. But then they've got to start getting ready for work that night. Yeah. And you just keep repeating this process.
It's a vicious cycle.
And then you're fucked up.
Yeah.
Because I don't give a shit how old you are.
Yeah.
You're young, old, it doesn't matter. That doesn't last very long.
Yeah.
And you're not exercising properly.
Oh, definitely.
The whole regime falls apart.
Absolutely.
And you've been a chef, you're probably not even eating properly.
Yeah.
Because you're doing weird meals, weird times.
Well, it's interesting because, it's a bit of an oxymoron when you think about it. Our profession is to cook and feed, yet we don't cook and feed for ourselves.
Yeah, that old saying, physician heal thyself, should be applied to chef. Feed thyself.
Yeah, exactly.
Nutritionally.
Exactly.
Because when you do a course, you learn about nutrition. You don't just learn how to prepare a fucking sauce or whatever. Right. You learn about nutrition as part of the apprenticeship.
Yeah, it is.
Actual nutrition, like scientifically.
Well, interestingly enough, there hasn't been, a lot of culinary schools will give you the basics. Which, look, I never went to culinary school. I was determined to find the best restaurants and get an apprenticeship. My grandfather was a chef, so he always said, don't waste your time going to a cooking school. Just go to the people that you think are interesting and you want to learn from, and go there. Go get straight into the fire. And I did. But it's not like you sit down and you learn about nutrition. What you do learn is how things grow, when the best season for them is to utilize. You do learn that. But interestingly enough, nutrition isn't a prerequisite when it comes to cooking in restaurants. And I understand that restaurants are, it's a form of entertainment. So a lot of people like to go out. It's a social thing. People love going out and eating food, so they don't have to do it themselves. They love the social aspect of drinking and having discussions with people. It's a celebration.
It's also an indulgence.
Exactly. It is.
I deserve it. I'm going to indulge myself. Fuck it.
Exactly.
That type of thing.
And which is a beautiful thing. But because of that, there's no real reason, I guess, for people to want to be able to teach nutrition. But I think it's such a necessary thing to do that. And I did get that interest of nutrition, because I wasn't only involved in fine dining restaurants. I ended up doing a lot of private dining. I ended up in an interesting way. I kind of accidentally started cooking with a lot of actors in Hollywood.
How'd you get that gig?
Well, interesting story. I had gone to Los Angeles and
As a chef?
As a chef, a friend of mine was opening a restaurant in San Francisco, and I wasn't doing anything at the time. I had just finished an apprenticeship at a restaurant in Spain, and he said to me, "Look, you want to come to the United States and help me open this restaurant in San Francisco?" And I said, "Absolutely." I wanted to get out and do some traveling. Did that. The restaurant fell apart. The whole business fell apart before it even opened. So, here I was in California, no money. I remember the first time I got there, I bought myself a Land Cruiser, like an '82 Land Cruiser, and I lived in it for almost 2 years.
It's not unusual in San Francisco.
No, exactly. Well, that's the thing. I felt right at home. I didn't feel that, I felt like it was pretty common. But, I ended up being completely broke, and I thought, okay, I need to go back to Europe and work back in restaurants. But I ended up running into a friend of mine who was a chef that I worked with years ago in Barcelona, who happened to be cooking on a film set, and kind of told me, he was kind of vague about the whole thing. And he said, "Oh yeah, I'm cooking, for this actor. And it's quite amazing. It's just, I can never go back to the restaurant world. This is perfect. The pay is amazing. The experience is amazing." I was like, "Oh, wow, that's incredible." And I never even thought to ask of how to get involved. So right before I end up leaving back to Spain, probably a week before, I get a phone call. And it's this friend. He says, "Look, I need to go away. A family member's sick. I need someone to fill in for me. Can you do it? It's really easy. I can tell you exactly what it is and you'll be fine. You're going to get some good money." I said, "Sign me up. I'll do it." So cut to, get there, start, he kind of shows me the ropes in it. And the person I ended up cooking for was Tom Cruise. This was back in 2000.
Was it a Mission Impossible movie?
No, it was actually Vanilla Sky.
Okay.
This was when he was with Penelope Cruz, who I actually knew through other friends in Spain. Vaguely, we met a long time ago, but he was dating her at the time, and he was filming this in Los Angeles in different parts, and it ended up being Tom Cruise. I thought, "Oh wow, okay." I wasn't very starstruck, but at the same time, I thought, "Wow, this is interesting." But there was no specific way of cooking for him, except for he just wanted the most healthiest, the most beautiful produce, organic. And
so can I just stop there? You mean that's a requirement? So. When you say the most beautiful produce and healthy produce, he would build a requirement for you, the chef, to go find him certain types of produce and healthy produce.
Yeah.
To make a certain dish. Did he say, like, "I like
Not
spaghetti
really.
bolognese" or?
Not necessarily. No, it was like my background obviously is Mediterranean. So he just wanted good, beautiful fresh vegetables. If I was going to make any sort of pasta, it would be obviously from scratch. The best, chickens, the best meat. It was a very balanced. What he asked for was it's quite common.
But you work it out.
Yeah, pretty much.
You made the menu.
I was lucky enough that he wasn't picky as far as what he wanted, as long as it was just good source of product.
So it wasn't about the flavors or the dish itself, but it was about the nutritional value of what he was eating as well.
Exactly.
That had equal portions, sort of thing.
Exactly. Yeah. So it was really easy and wonderful to be able to cook for them. But that only lasted 3 months. He was done with the film. And then from that point on, I expected to go back to Spain. And from that point on, he just referred me to other clients, to other actors looking for someone to cook for them. And some of them required a very specific diet, and some of them didn't.
So apart from Cruise, who did you do apart from Tom?
I did some work with Robert Downey Jr., with DiCaprio, from Bill Clinton. Most recently, who I was with for quite a few years, is Chris Hemsworth. I was with him for a while.
Up northern New South Wales?
Yeah, well,
on set.
On set. I would travel with him as well. That's how I ended up living in Australia. He was living in Los Angeles at one point and decided, you know what, I want to move back to Australia. And I'm thinking Byron Bay. I'm like, Byron Bay, I've never heard of Byron Bay. Hey, well, I'll go with you. He was working, I think he was we were doing the second Avengers. So ended up buying a place in Byron, visited Byron for the first time. I fell in love, instantly. I thought, wow, I can live here. Prior to that, I had visited Australia before and I loved Australia. I just never expected to live here. So I moved there with him. I worked
to Byron.
To Byron.
Because he lives in Cooper Shoot, for those who don't know. Because he's my neighbour.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I got a private resort there. It's just around the corner from where he is. Yeah.
Oh, funny.
It's a bigger joint, bigger property than he, more big property. But yeah, so I don't know him, but a lot of my mates up there know him.
Yeah.
He's a bit of a ledge up there. They all...
He is. He's done a lot for Byron, you know? I mean...
No, in that regard, I say he's done a lot for the joint.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And he was a great guy to work with. He's a perfect example of someone who really pays attention to his health. It was easy to help him with his food and diet because he's such a committed individual when it comes to exercise. Well, he's a big boy.
You know, look at the way he's got to look.
Yeah, well,
he's got to maintain muscle mass and all sorts of things.
Yeah.
And also, he's probably got a rigid exercise program which requires a lot of fuel.
Absolutely.
So when it comes to what you cook for him, I want to ask you this question: do you sort of, because I remember at one stage someone telling me that Chris Hemsworth, preparing for whatever Thor or whatever it is he prepares for, would eat 2.2 kilograms of protein, not protein powder, but like protein meat or something like that, per kilogram of weight that he had. Something along 2.2 grams per kilogram of weight, something along those lines.
Right.
Would he go to, or would he sort of, or someone tell you, like, this is the extent we need to go to, we've got to make sure he's eating 250 grams of beef a day or whatever it is, and therefore you have to make sure you have that amount of meat in there and that amount of vegetables so that he can take a crap in the morning, and he's got this amount of carbs in there as well, and he's got this amount of oil in there. I mean, in terms of a nutritional sense, did you go to that? Did someone like him go to that extent?
Look,
like a dietitian type thing,
right? Look, with him, no, I didn't weigh anything, measure anything. It was more about the being consistent with what he was eating. But no, I would get, he's a big meat eater. When I started working with him, he wasn't that fond of seafood until I started cooking a lot of seafood dishes that were very common in Spain or things that I had learned in Japan. So he really started to appreciate and love seafood. But no, it's always been very, I'm also the kind of person that doesn't necessarily need to measure. I don't think it's that important to have to measure things. It's like if the quality of what you're using is good quality, you know where it's coming from, you know how it's raised, and then that's all you really need to do. And then you just cook it properly, or try not to mess it up somehow.
And don't cook the shit out of it.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Or like when it comes to vegetables, for argument's sake.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is true or not, but let's say you're I don't know, decide you want to put spinach in something, and let's say spinach has got, I don't know, high levels of iron in it or whatever it allegedly has in it. But the iron obviously doesn't come from the spinach, it comes from the soil.
Right.
And the soil's got to be, a certain colour to indicate that there's iron in there. And, we all know we don't all know, but I know, I'm a farmer, so I know from past practices that a soil gets depleted through erosion, rain, weather, and the number of times you've grown stuff in there. So, the old crop rotation process is an important process. I mean, during the rotation period, by the way, you feed the soil to make sure you've got enough microbes in it, blah, 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 a whole lot of stuff. When you go to find your ingredients, how important is it then for chefs generally to take a view on the quality of their ingredients? In other words, the nutritional quality of their ingredients? Or is a chef's obligation just to entertain you and put you in a restaurant and make the food colourful so I can take an Instagram photograph and post it on my page?
Well, that's the thing. I think it is important for chefs to know what the nutritional value is of the products that they're utilizing, and you get that by speaking to the farmers and asking them, what are you doing? How are you rotating your crops? How are you treating? What sort of methods are you utilizing now? Because a lot of farmers are changing their methods constantly just to be able to adapt to the environment, and so it is. It's important for a chef to do that. And yes, there is that aspect of entertainment. There's always going to be that aspect of entertainment. But if a restaurant's going to be sustainable, it has to take an interest in the quality, because it does affect us. What we consume, we are what we consume. And the thing is, I do feel that a lot of people are taking more of an interest. More people are wanting to know what they're eating, where it comes from, how it's treated, because health, now more than ever, we are. I mean, especially look what we've gone through, this pandemic, and this there's this anxiety now that has developed about our mental and physical health. So more people are trying to find ways to be healthier, even if that means when they go out to dinner, making healthier choices. But if you know where a chef is getting their produce from, and the care they put into it, it's gonna show up on the plate, and also it's just gonna show in how you feel. I think being aware of your own body. If you eat the right things, you notice it. If you eat the wrong things, you notice it. You feel it. And that's one of the things that I've always helped a lot of the clients or entertainers that I've worked with, is not so much about weighing things out, eating only this or only that. It's about, how do you feel? That's one of the things I've always asked, is how do you feel like when you eat this or that, or how have you felt all week when we've eaten this? I think having that self-awareness is very important. And that's what I try and train a lot of my clients with, is that self-awareness.
What about this, Sergio? I'm a food narc, okay? There are certain types of food I just will not fucking eat. And I'll tell you why. Well, the test for me is not how I feel after I eat. The test is how I feel in the middle of the night, or after I've been in bed a few hours. To me, there's nothing worse than waking up dry as a chip. Your mouth feels like the bottom of the cockatoo's cage.
Yeah.
And you feel fucked, and you've got a headache, and you're dying of thirst, and you've got to go and stick your head under the tap at 2 o'clock in the morning and turn it on full blast.
Yeah.
And that's not good for you either.
Yeah.
That all, and there seem, I don't know if it's just me, I don't know if I'm some sort of indicator, but my friends who tend to be in a different generation to you, for example, my friends are all saying that they are anti that type of food, and that those foods come from certain regions, generally speaking, and they are those foods were once very popular, especially within restaurants, but now I don't want to say what type of restaurants, but now those people are rejecting that type of meal, and they're actually tending more towards not so much what it looks like on the plate, but more about how it makes you feel after.
Right.
In other words, or probably another way of putting it, it doesn't make you feel like shit.
Right. Yeah.
Because it's not going to make you feel great. But food doesn't make you feel great. I mean, like, you eat it, you love it, it's tasty, it's good. You enjoy the company you're eating with, etc. And you can sort of comment, oh, well, that looks pretty good, and blah blah blah. That's good. It makes you get a good bit of a glow out of that. But one thing food should not do to you is make you feel like shit within 8 hours.
Absolutely. No, yeah, especially.
Is there a movement towards that?
Is there what?
A movement towards that with chefs? So chefs starting to work that shit out.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, look, there is. Again, it does make a difference. I'm sure you would realize how your body feels like if you have, I don't know, let's just say you have some takeaway from some dodgy Chinese takeout place.
We won't say Chinese. Anything.
I mean, or anything, or any fast food.
Yeah. It is any fast food. Yeah.
Any fast food.
Yeah.
I said that Chinese food only because of the MSG, and there's a lot of places.
And that's the sort of thing I was referring to. MSG,
right.
Et cetera.
Yeah. I mean, but look, there's MSG in a lot of things. It doesn't have to be just that type of food.
It was in pizzas.
Exactly. But you do notice it. I think it again, those are typically shortcuts of making food taste good. don't need that. The reason why a lot of people may use that is because it is faster, it is cheaper. And when it comes to natural, beautiful, unprocessed food, it does take more work. It takes more care, and it is because cooking does require time and patience. That's probably why a lot of people don't especially fast food places don't really care to do that. It's all about numbers and how much can we sell? Let's get rid of it. And a lot of times all that is like really bad quality cuts of meat and just produce that isn't really looked after.
I guess you can take a shitty quality meat, a cut of meat, like a cheaper cut of meat. You can turn it into something pretty good, if you've got time.
Well, exactly.
Slow cook it and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But I remember when I was working in the restaurant. It's an old Greek guy, Michael, but he's passed away these days, so I can talk about him. But it was always about, Mark, more salt. Salt fixes everything. More oil. And there's books written on this stuff, like, fat, which is oil, salt and sugar. Yeah. Like, they make everything taste good.
Absolutely.
And like, your potato crisps, like at the end of the day, that's what it is. It's fat, sugar and salt. Like, that's what your chips are. Your potato, I'm talking about the crisps,
Yeah.
I mean, and we go, wow, how good is that? And they give me a beer and I'm going to watch a footy. Sure. And I still do it once a week. Yeah. But that's sort of my, that's my sort of spoil. But yeah, like that old school thing is a fast, I think, exiting stage left. And chefs, I think chefs are at the front of all this. And the chefs are trying to sort of turn us around a little bit, but it's very expensive and it's not available to everybody. It's a little bit unfair. It's a little bit elitist. I mean, you're talking about movie actors.
Sure. I get it.
When's the movement going to sort of start to apply en masse, to make everyone able to sort of start to understand this? Because governments don't educate, even that triangle they showed you, whatever they call it, the food bloody thing.
Yeah, the food pyramid. Yeah,
that's all bullshit. That's
it
wrong.
Is.
So what do you think it's going to take for what the rich people can enjoy in terms of nutrition and experience, nice food? When do you think that's going to sort of start to filter down to the masses? I mean, let's just talk about in Australia as opposed to countries where they are third world countries, but Australia.
I think it's happening already. I think things such as MasterChef and all these things are starting to kind of showcase and even share certain information about different ways of cooking. A lot of it has to do with accessibility of just cooking in general. I think it's something that you more and more people are starting to take an interest in ways of cooking. Now you've got all this equipment now that's for a long time was only available in restaurant kitchens. To be able to achieve the certain quality or even the end result of what you would have at a restaurant, you can now do in your own home. And I think that's now because that's become very accessible. Food is also becoming very accessible. I know a lot of farmers who sell directly to a lot of just private homes. There's no middle person anymore. A lot of people that I've spoken to are starting to do that directly. Is starting to do like monthly subscriptions, that sort of thing. You're starting to see that a lot more, and and also a lot of cooking shows and modern day chefs are figuring out how to give that information, show unique, if you're on a budget, how you can eat healthy on a budget. It's all about, all this stuff that's available that you can get so much information just off YouTube. There's a lot of chefs doing that.
But where do people go? Like, because I still think you're talking to the converted, but I think most people, I'll be honest, I don't think they've got a clue. I'm talking about, if I drive 10 kilometres away from where we are now, people just don't really have a clue. They may just go, should I just go down to the local joint and get the same thing, or get takeaway on Monday nights, takeaway on Friday nights, Saturday nights. I'll have a hangover on Saturday morning, so I'm going to eat bacon and eggs and sausages and whatever. And by the way, I've got nothing against meat. I love meat. But yeah, I just think that I actually think most people don't have a clue. I don't think, because they don't watch MasterChef. They don't watch these shows.
Yeah.
I think we need to have a movement towards better nutrition that's made available for the masses. And the reason I'm saying this is because I think it leads to better mental health.
Yeah.
So if you're eating shit,
Yeah.
you're not going to sleep properly. If you don't sleep properly, you don't exercise properly. If you don't exercise properly and you don't sleep properly, you're missing 2 out of the 3 major ingredients to live in a normal life, like what I consider to be a normal life. Normal longevity and with a normal health span in that longevity period. So the 2 big components is sleep and food affects your sleep. So if you're trying to build a sleep strategy, if you don't sleep properly, part of the strategy is what the fuck did you eat and when did you eat it?
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
And people don't know.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. No, but there's so many books being written now, that people have access to. I've noticed that people are making more of an effort to understand that.
Is that in Australia, do you think?
I
what
think
about
so.
say something like Spain?
Well, when you talk about Spain, it's such a, Europe in general, it's such a cultural thing. Well, I mean, you would know this about Greece. We've grown up knowing the fishmongers or the people that fish, who brought the fish into their shops. We know the butchers. We grew up with them on the same street. We know all these people. That's how I grew up. And so we were always educated on what we consumed. It was a normal thing. Now you're talking about bigger cities, especially like here, things change, but you're talking about a place like Spain who has done it for thousands of years. That's
so-called
just
Mediterranean
that's
diet.
exactly that's just the culture, And I think that it is happening in Australia. I think it's an incredible time to be a chef in Australia, a young chef. Yeah, absolutely. Because first of all, the produce here is incredible.
Is that right? As compared to anywhere else?
I believe it is.
Yeah, we're just talking about seafood or vegetables?
Seafood, meats, spices. I'm fascinated by all the indigenous ingredients here. There's so much. It's a blank canvas, and all these. There's so many amazing chefs now, taking advantage of that. And look, Australia is full of immigrants. It's all immigrants. They have blood from different parts of the world, and I think a lot of these younger chefs are really taking advantage of that, and they're proud of that, and at the same time utilizing what is available here, because we do have beautiful ingredients here.
So we have we're becoming more obese in Australia.
That is true.
We're sort of heading, not as bad as Mary, but we're sort of going down that track.
Right.
And I don't understand it.
Well, look, I think it's also about educating, people with that. And look, like you said, a lot of it does have to. It's a complete package. It's not just the nutrition. It is the quality of your rest and recovery. Sleep. It is. Do you exercise? Do you walk? Do you lift weights? Whatever it is, it's having that balance. It is having good food. Good sleep and good exercise. That's the
3 mainstays.
Well, exactly. But not. I think it is changing, but at the same time, you look at what's happened in the last couple of years. You look mental, emotional, and mental health has also, been affected by everything that's gone on. The amounts of stress and anxiety that has occurred post-pandemic, it has affected a lot of us, or all of us, in some way, shape, or form. So that's why I really think that now more than ever, people are taking, advantage of correcting that. And we have access to it. We have all this technology now. You can research anything and then watch a video on anything related to food, health, and fitness. It's accessible. And and chefs are probably one of the biggest now who are the leaders in all of that. Like I said, I know a lot of chefs who have made a complete change within themselves as far as exercise and nutrition. Because like I said, a lot of chefs, we spend time cooking for other people, and we work long, hours making sure that people are fed, and yet we've somehow haven't paid attention to our own health. But now that's changing. I certainly do it. I know a lot of chefs that do it, who take the time and the discipline to feed themselves. who to do exercise every single day, who meditate every single day. There's this whole holistic kind of approach that's happened with a lot of chefs, which is really great to see. And a lot of these chefs are making a difference. They're putting all that information, whether it's be social media or dinners. They're the ones that are speaking out and educating the people, which is what I was talking about earlier, which was the future of a chef is going to have a lot more responsibility.
Is the influence coming from the client or the customer or from the chefs as to how you lead a better quality life in terms of your nutrition?
I think it's a chef, because when you think about it, like a lot of these famous people, like they have the money to be able to afford to have someone do this for them.
Yeah.
Not to say that they're not interested in their own health and nutrition, but they don't necessarily have the need to probably talk about it or share their information with other people, as long as they're doing what they need to do for whatever film that they're doing.
Well, they're going to get the shirt off at the end of the day.
Well, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And look, there are some people that have something to say about their nutrition, and they do want to use their platform to share what they need to say about nutrition. And there are some actors that do that. Look, Chris Hemsworth has the CenterFit app.
Yep. So
he created that with a lot of trainers and chefs that he believed were a huge help to his nutrition. So he's created that platform so that he can be vocal about the importance of nutrition to him and to other people, to try and make it accessible. So there are people that are doing that, but at the end of the day, I think it's still the chef that makes it happen, or the nutritionist, or the trainer, whoever that is. They're the ones ultimately that have the craft, have the ultimate knowledge. And, if anything, we're utilizing these famous people as catalysts or vehicles to be able to project that even further, so that is an advantage. But I do feel that we're the ones that have that responsibility to do it. If we've got the information, we have to share it.
So do you think, therefore, chefs have a new role in society?
Oh, yeah.
As opposed to just being someone down the corner, restaurant around the corner, making meals from us every Friday night or whatever it is?
Yeah.
Do you think they now have a new role, and that they sort of become nearly interventionists there? Or is that taking it too far? The chefs should just stick to their lane?
No, I think it is. I think I see a future of chefs being more teachers.
Teaching us.
Yeah, absolutely. Just it's not, like I said, I think it's not just cooking. Our craft isn't enough anymore. I think participating and understanding and working with farmers by learning their methods, their techniques, learning about agriculture, taking a more a scientific approach to certain things, and understanding how nutrition works, within the body and chemically and that sort of thing. It's a much bigger beast than we ever anticipated. For so many years, it was looked at as only a form of entertainment. But when you think about it, cooking started as a form of survival. It's always been within us. We did it because we needed to. We did it out of necessity. Exactly.
And community too.
Exactly. It created our culture. Cooking is the most visible DNA that we have. When you look at how our cooking has evolved, it shows a lot about how we've evolved as people and in our culture, and how our bodies have evolved. So I think it's an important thing. And we're going back to that. A lot of restaurants, you still have your fine dining restaurants, but a lot of chefs now are going back to the basics, which seems to happen quite a bit. But I think now more than ever, doing more basic things, not being so polished and so perfect and modern. It's about just appreciating, a good piece of, steak or lamb or fish or beautiful vegetables done as they are, without all the little intricacies that fine dining is known for. And not to say there's a place for that, obviously, but it is something, like I said, good cooking requires a certain type of stamina, and awareness, because you look at the long hours and the drudgery that's involved in that. Like you need to really take advantage of that time and really fulfill it in a way where it's not only going to benefit you and your business, but it's going to really reach a lot of people and make them want to, take care of themselves more.
Gives a greater purpose.
Yeah,
It's a
exactly.
greater purpose. It's not just a transaction.
Right.
It's there for chefs can read the actual additional benefit that they are promoting. I mean, I think that makes sense to me. I mean, the only thing I'm worried about as a nutritionist is say, hey, you're a chef, stay in your lane. I'm the
Right.
nutritionist.
Right.
I'll do the nutrition side. You do the cooking side. But I don't see any problem with the crossover. I don't see any.
Absolutely
And by the way,
not.
we probably just need to see a few nutritionists who might start to learn a bit about cooking.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what we need to see.
Well, it is. I agree. I think that crossover is necessary. I think they work together. I don't think either one should be without the other. But it is, and that's why I think chefs will have to do that to be able to sustain their careers. And also be very business savvy. Like I really admire Shannon Bennett, who I know quite well. He's a brilliant chef, brilliant businessman. There's a lot of chefs like that who are doing more than their craft, and they're giving back, and they're really kind of changing what a chef is meant to do. So it's a great thing to see. But there's a lot of incredible chefs out there, and like I said, here Australia is just full of incredible chefs. So I'm really just proud and excited to be able to do what I do here. So it's been an incredible journey so far. So it's been wonderful, really, really wonderful.
Sergio Perera, I think your insights actually well timed.
Mm.
I do think the world is starting to become, well, parts of the world anyway, starting to become much more aware of what they put in their gob is going to make their day one way or the other, or their night.
Yeah.
And linking what you do with sleep and exercise and mental health and as well as physical health, I think that's a really important linkage. I'm so glad you came in to talk about this, but also sort of give us a bit of an insight into what celebrities are doing, because unfortunately, or fortunately, maybe it's another way of looking at it, a lot of what we do and how we change our lives is based on what we admire others doing.
Yeah.
And celebrities have put up such a pedestal these
yeah.
days, particularly with all social mediums, that I think celebrities nearly have an obligation to start to share with us, and maybe we get it done through their chefs like you, but what they consider to be best for them, for their life.
Yeah.
And us, mere mortals, we get an opportunity to share in that knowledge and share in those learnings and hopefully sharing the benefits. So thanks very much for coming in, Sergio.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much.